Hi everyone, this is Naz with Peak Realty and welcome to my kitchen today. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Cooking with Naz. So today we are going to make pot roast, but we are going to make it in the slow cooker. This is a fabulous meal, absolutely delicious, and by the end of it, you will be left with the most flavorful and tender pot roast that you've probably ever had. So let's get started. Okay guys, so in order to make this roast, let's get all of our ingredients together. The first thing that you'll need is about 1 tablespoon of butter. Next, let's get our seasonings organized. So for this recipe, you'll need onion powder, black pepper, kosher salt, dried tarragon, and garlic powder. Next is the most important ingredient, and that of course is the roast. I use bottom blade, but if you choose to use a more tough cut of meat, like top sirloin, then you may have to cook your roast for an extra hour or 2 to get the perfect consistency. You'll also need 1 medium-sized onion, 2 cloves of garlic, and 1.5 beef bouillon cubes. You can also use beef broth, but I find that the bouillon cubes add a lot of extra flavor. One thing that we don't have listed here is flour. You want to add about 1 to 2 tablespoons of flour to thicken up your gravy. Okay, so now that we have our ingredients together, let's get cooking. So for this recipe, you want to go to your local grocery store and buy a roast. And I prefer bottom blade. I find that it has a lot of fat throughout the meat, which adds a lot of flavor. But you can use anything, prime rib, top sirloin, it's completely up to you. So this is a great recipe for those who are on the go. You can literally season the meat, put all the ingredients into the slow cooker, leave it for 8 hours, and by the time you come home, you have an amazing meal ready for you and your family. So a lot of people tell me that when they make a roast in the slow cooker, they tell me that it doesn't turn out well, or there was no flavor, or the texture wasn't right. Usually that's because people will season the whole roast and then put that whole piece of meat into the slow cooker. But when you think about it, the flavors are actually not getting inside directly into the meat. So what you need to do to really get a flavorful roast is cut your meat into 3 to 4 inch chunks and then season each part. By doing that, the flavor is in each part of the meat, and then also a couple hours before the roast is ready, we actually go in and we open up the meat even more with a fork and a knife so that now the flavors are infused right into the meat. So I've already gone ahead and cut my meat into chunks. So now I'm going to season each part. So I'm going to start off with kosher salt. So I'm just going to sprinkle the top of the meat, and then I'm going to turn over each piece and do the same. Then you're going to go ahead and season it with ground pepper. Okay, I'm going to put some garlic powder, onion powder, and lastly, tarragon leaves. I don't put too much of this, just a little bit on each piece. So now that the tops of each piece are seasoned, I'm just going to turn over each piece and season the bottoms. Literally just repeat the same process all over again, starting with the kosher salt. We're just going to set that aside for now. Grab a medium to large size onion. So you're going to peel your onion and cut this onion into chunks. So you can cut up the onion any way that you like. I prefer large chunks. So what I do is I cut the onion in half and then into 4 wedges, and then 3 cuts across to give me chunks like this.
Round 1, fight!
Then I'm going to crush my garlic, and then if you have a garlic crusher, you can use that. You can use a grater to grate the garlic, or if you want to finely chop the garlic, then you can do that as well. By crushing it, you're getting the full flavor of the garlic out. I use every part of the garlic, so whatever's left in there, make sure to take that out and add it to your garlic. So now you're going to put your meat pieces into your slow cooker. So what I like to do first is I'd like to add a layer of onion to the bottom of my slow cooker. So I'll just break up some of the pieces of onion here. Okay, and then I'm gonna just put some pieces in. So I like to tuck the pieces of onion in between the pieces of meat to really get the flavor in there. Then I'm gonna grab my garlic and I'm just gonna spread this over my meat. Okay, there we go. So next we're gonna dissolve our bouillon cubes into water, and then we're gonna pour that mixture over our roast. I prefer to use bouillon cubes because I find that there's so much more flavor in them as opposed to beef stock. So you're gonna grab a small saucepan or pot, add about a cup to a cup and a half of water to it. I use 1.5 cubes for my mixture. I find that that is the perfect amount of flavor for this recipe. So I just crush the cube, put it on low heat, and whisk this mixture until the cube is fully dissolved. Okay, so now that our cubes are dissolved in the water, we're just gonna pour this over our roast. So you want to pour enough of the liquid so that it is at the top of the meat, but not completely covering the meat. You should have the meat peeking out of the water. You don't want to put too much water into this because then you'll just end up with a stew. If you do not have enough liquid in your crock pot, then feel free to add some water. It should look like this. The meat is still peeking out of the liquid, but there's just enough so that you end up with a very tender roast here and lots of gravy at the end. Next, you're gonna take about 1.5 tablespoons of flour, and you're just going to sprinkle a layer over your roast. This will thicken your mixture and give you a nice gravy to dip your roast in. And then lastly, you're gonna add 1 tablespoon of butter cut into cubes to your roast. Guys, so a mistake that I did here is I poured the liquid before I put the flour into the pot. You want to put the flour first, then the butter, and then pour the liquid over so that the flour gets wet and dissolves into the liquid. So now I'm giving it a little stir so that my flour gets absorbed into the liquid. Either way is fine, but just make sure that the flour is absorbed into the liquid. And that's it. That's everything that goes into our pot roast. So now we're just gonna cover it up. And we are going to set it on low for 8 hours. Now, if you wanted to leave this cooking for 8 hours, you can go ahead and do that. If you do leave it cooking for 8 hours, then maybe mix it so that the flour is not just sitting at the top before you leave the house. But if you are gonna be around, then what I'd like to do is stir it every 3 to 4 hours and move the meat around. And don't forget, a couple of hours before it's done, I like to go back in and break up and open up the meat to make sure that more of the flavor gets in.
Meanwhile,
all right guys, so our roast has been cooking for about 6 hours now. So I'm going to start lightly pulling the pieces of meat open so that more flavor can get into the meat. Now would also be a good time to skim the excess fat that rises to the surface of the gravy. Okay guys, so our roast has been cooking for 8 hours and now it's time for dinner. So there you have it, your pot roast in the slow cooker. I promise you this will be one of the most delicious and fall off the bone roasts you'll ever have in your life.
Was it on a bone?
No.
Is it supposed to fall off the bone?
Why?
Because it was never on a bone.
But it's like fall off the bone. No?
It's not. It fall off the bone.
Okay.
The bone.
One of the most tender and delicious roasts you'll ever try in your life. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so of course I'm gonna need someone to try my roast and give me their feedback. So I'm gonna invite my sister, who is my filmmaker, to come and try my roast today. So Sad, come give it a shot. See what you think.
I was laughing. It was so good. Really, it's delicious, honestly.
Okay, good. Thumbs up. We're good. Awesome. Okay. I don't know why that makes me laugh so much. Well, that wraps up the second episode of Cooking with Naz. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. And remember, whether you're looking to buy or sell a home, or if you have any questions about today's real estate market, please feel free to contact me. This is Naz with Peak Realty. I'll see you soon.